Hey everyone, in today's video I'll be showing you how I layer and mix my drums. If you find this video useful, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. Also, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more content. Firstly, I'll play the project and then I'll show you how I created the drums. The project sounds like this. Alright guys, so we're in the project now. So the first thing I'm going to do is look for the key note of the song. So if I play the chord progression, I'll show you how I figured that out. So in the gaps of the notes, I have a note higher up, and that is in the key of C. So this song is now in the key of C. So I downloaded a kick that was in the key of C, but to check that it's in the right key, if you open up the kick into flex pitch, the note at the bottom there is the note of the kick. So let's say the chord progression was in the key of D, I would go into the flex pitch section and I would just move the note up to D. So now the kick would be in tune with the song. So if I play the chord progression and the kick together, you'll see they're both in tune with each other. So on the kick, I've just added an EQ to lower some of the lows, because with the bass, it's really punchy. Then I've added OTT, which is compression, so that helps to punch the kick in the mix. And then direction mix, so I put the kick into mono, because it's a very low frequency, it has to be in mono. If it is wider, it would interfere with the rest of the song. And then kickstart, which I have the long kick preset enabled. And basically that means that as the bass comes in, the kick is ducking out, so they never interfere with each other. And then in terms of the volume of the kick, I just mess around with the volume until I find it fits perfectly with the bass line in the chords. So if I play the bass here and the kick, you'll see the volume is kind of relative to each other. So next I added a snare that I got from Splice, and it sounds like this. So on the snare, in the EQ section, I'm just lowering it down to 124 Hertz, and that basically stops it interfering with the kick. Direction mixer just puts it a bit more stereo than it is. I then have the first of the hi-hat loops, which is a shaker loop, and that sounds like this. Again, that's just from Splice. I've cut out the low end again, and I've added some kickstart to help it fit the groove of the song. Then some Space Designer, which is reverb. So a very small amount of reverb, but it helps the hi-hat loops sit in the mix. Then I have this open hi-hat that sounds like this. That again, just cut out the low end, and I've added a different type of reverb, which is the chroma verb from Logic. I've just put the drum ambience at 42% wet, so that helps it in the mix again. Lastly, we have the second hi-hat loop, and that sounds like this. For this one, I've cut out the lows and also the very highs, because it was very sort of loud in the mix in comparison to what I wanted it to be. And then kickstart again to help it flow with the rhythm. So those elements together sound like this. Another thing to mention here is that I've panned some of the hi-hat loops left and some right, and this just helps create a stereo field of the drums. So rather than having everything coming in both ears, you have some drums coming out the left ear and some coming out of the right ear. So if you're listening in headphones right now, you should be able to hear the hi-hat loops coming from different directions of the headphones, and that just helps make the mix cleaner. So this hi-hat loop down here, I've only panned it -10 to the left, and this one up here, I've panned +10 to the right. So this helps make these two loops more stereo, so they sound like this. So in the second half of the drop, in order to make it remain interesting to the listener, I've added some more drum elements. So the first one is a second snare loop that sounds like this. So that again just has a low cut and a high cut, just to cut out some of the high end and the low end of the snare so that it fits better in the mix. It has OTT for compression and direction mixer to make it a little bit more mono. It's also been panned left whilst the main snare has been panned right. I've then added a third snare that pans around with the drop. So if I play the kick in this snare, you'll see that the first snare hits in the middle, and then the second one is on the left ear, and the third one is on the right ear. So that sounds like this. So this just helps with the groove for the track, and also with it panning left and right, it just makes it more interesting than if they were all coming out of the center. Finally, I've added the same open hi-hat as I had at the top here, but now it comes in with the hi-hat in the loop as well. So if I play the hi-hat and the hi-hat loop, you'll see that there. So with all the drums combined in the second half of the song, it sounds like this. In the final part before the orchestral section, I bring in the clock, and that just helps to transition from this part of the drop into the orchestral section. So with the clock as well, it sounds like this. I've also slowed down the clock at the end to help with the transition. So to do that, I've just selected the clock. I've gone up to this section here, and I've just put the slow down to 2500, which is 1 bar. So that does help with the transition. So for the drum fills, the main drum fill for the drop sounds like this. And I've added a second one to help bring it into the drop, and that sounds like this. So on there, I've just added some low cut, and I've also taken out 168 Hertz, which was really muddy. So that just helps to clean up the mix. Then with this other drum fill, I've cut out the lows, and I've also turned the volume down because I use it throughout the drop. So you'll see down here, I'm also using this drum fill. So with the drums, it sounds like this. So this helps to keep the track flowing every 4 bars, which makes it better for the listening experience. So finally, I want to talk about the volume of the drum elements. So a lot of demos I hear, the hi-hats are really loud in the mix. So it's always best to keep them down, but then EQ them into the mix better. So that's how I layer the drums in my track. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you next time.